What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Rep podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. This episode is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements and Crystal's Bikinis. Today, I am joined by one of my longstanding bodybuilding friends, Scott Myslinski. Scott is a competitor, a coach, and a very successful podcast host. So, I guess give it up for my friend Scott. Scott, how are you, man?
Thank you. Thank you. That's quite an intro. Really appreciate it, Joseph.
Yeah, it's a valid one, man. You're one of the first people that I thought of when I started wanting to do this more frequently and kind of get out of my own comfort zone. And a large part of that was because of what you do and what you've been doing for a long time. So
Thank you.
talk to me. We're going to talk bodybuilding, but I want to talk about the show first. I
Sure.
selfishly want to talk about the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to try and pick your brain as much as I can.
Yeah.
So, talk to me. How did it start,
Yeah.
and how has it, as it's grown? So, tell me how it started, and as it's grown, talk to me about how your expectations or what you've gotten from hosting the show
Mm.
have differed from what you thought it might have been before it turned into this.
Mm. Great questions. First of all, I want to say I'm honored to be here, and I've
Oh
listened
yeah,
your other competitor episodes, and I think they're fantastic. I think it's really great. I'm getting a lot out of them, so thank you for doing it. Um, so I started the podcast. So this was pre-bodybuilding. This was back in 2018. I was a devout follower of the carnivore diet, believe it or not.
wow, no way.
Yeah, yeah. So from 2016, like pre Sean Baker, pre Paul
Right.
Saladino, anything, I got really into the carnivore diet, and I did it for 3 years strictly. No cheat
Wow.
meals,
Oh, I
nothing.
know how you are. You're on the money when you're
Yeah.
into something.
So, like I was podcasts weren't back then what they are today, but I
Mhm.
was still listening to podcasts all the time. I was listening to all these keto podcasts that had carnivore guests on them. And my wife was like, "You should start a podcast. You should start a podcast." And I was like, "No, no, no. Like all these shows have all the guests I would want to have on anyway.
Right.
Why does the world need another one?" And she was like, I really think you should do it. And I had a good friend who had been podcasting for like 10 years, and it was his main business, named Lawrence Neal. And he had a whole podcast around high intensity training, which is kind of like super slow Arthur Jones
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
And he like was a huge fan of like Tim Ferriss and like the minimalist approach to things. And I was like, okay, what's the bare minimum I need to do to start a podcast and like put it out there? No website, no marketing, nothing. Like I just want to put out 3 episodes, and see how it goes. And also there were all these carnivore guests and people, but there was no podcast yet with the name carnivore in it.
Hmm.
So I named it the Carnivore Cast, and it was basically the first carnivore podcast. Um,
Nice. First to
and
market, baby.
yeah,
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I did 3 episodes. I enjoyed it. I had this guy William Schufelt on, who's like this pretty successful actor. He was one of the Power Rangers. He
Oh, no shit. Wow.
carnivore, yeah, and like a bunch of
10-year-old me is stoked to hear that, by the way.
a bunch of other people. And then eventually, I had Sean Baker on multiple times. I had Paul Saladino on multiple times. I went and spoke at carnivore conferences, like all this stuff.
Crazy.
Um, and it took off like you wouldn't believe because I basically found there were 3 Facebook groups at the time, each with, I think at the time, about 20,000 members,
Oh shit.
and I just posted it in there, and
Hmm.
they ate it up. They like no pun intended. They
Yeah,
listened
yeah.
to every single episode. They were devout
Nice.
followers, um, and those groups are now like over 100,000 each.
Whoa.
And all of them were like carnivore cast, like they couldn't get enough. Anyone in the community I had on and probably had on multiple times. And I put out 1 episode a week, every single week, consistently. Same format, a long form interview with a guest. And it would be, I'd basically mix researchers, experts, and then I started incorporating more like N equals one case studies of people who had overcome different conditions with carnivore
Mm.
diet, like diabetes or arthritis or major depression or things like this. Um, and I mean, I started getting all these sponsors.
Yeah.
I was crushing it, and I was, getting like 15,000 downloads an episode or more. It was doing really, really well. And then I ended up stopping the carnivore diet in 2019, right after my wedding, actually, because I like basically couldn't keep weight on. I was
Right.
losing weight too quickly and I couldn't digest the amount of fat I needed. So I was just eating like 800 grams of protein a day because you
It's
can't eat.
expensive carbs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I wasn't sleeping well, like all these
Ugh.
problems. And so I started eating more carbs and I kept the podcast going because it wasn't about me. It wasn't about like what is
Right.
Scott eating? It was about the guests. And then eventually I like just basically over the course of like a year later, I completely lost interest in carnivore and like having the
Mm.
same conversations over and over again. Like you can only talk about eating meat so much. And I was like getting really into bodybuilding. And I was like, I think I want to do a rebrand. So I rebranded it to the Scott Mize Show, which is what it is today.
Yeah.
And I started interviewing bodybuilders. I also have like the occasional random guest on like longevity or like psychedelics or something interesting to me. Um, and it's not quite every week now. I try to do one every other week. Um, and a lot of the sponsors went away. Interestingly, um, not many of the sponsors like went away because I wasn't doing carnivore anymore. A lot of the businesses just like kind of died.
Yeah.
um, but I still have been with Element, the electrolyte brand,
Yes.
the whole time, and they've been very, very good to me. And we signed like a 3-year deal, which is awesome.
Wow.
And the viewership and the listenership fell off a cliff.
That's what I
So,
was going to ask. Did
so,
any of them
so
stay?
I mean, it went from like 15,000 an episode to like 1,000 an episode.
Okay. All right.
And people might see my like follower account on my follower count on Instagram or on YouTube and be like, wow, this guy has so many followers. A lot of them are just like 57-year-old moms who are carnivore and like haven't
And don't
unsubscribed.
know how to unsubscribe. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I said you're going to be disappointed by my answer.
No,
It's
not at
like
all.
it's not like I have this huge bodybuilding audience. I think a decent amount of the people have stuck around. I don't think I have 1,000, people who just came in because of the bodybuilding, but yeah, that's kind of how it's evolved.
I'm not disappointed at all because that's all completely new to me. For as many times as we've spoken,
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So to hear that and to know that you had built it up in a certain way, I think it's more so now just about getting you out in front of people because you've taken that same like work ethic. Maybe it's not as frequently, but the amount of valuable guests that you have and the amount of value that I get as someone that's into this space from every related episode that I listen to is incredible. So as someone that was on the outside, I didn't even realize that there was that, I don't want to say lack of interest from the bodybuilding community, but I just assumed because the episodes were so good and you
Yeah.
had so many bodybuilding related guests, like if you go through your video account, it's all bodybuilding related people. And there's some big,
Yeah.
big names on there.
Yeah.
And so then I would see, you have 25K on the Instagram account. It's like 15 or 20K on the YouTube account. And I was just like, yeah, Scott's killing it. Like
Thank you. I'm
I'm not
flattered.
surprised by that at all. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
because of the quality of the content. So I hope,
Yeah.
um, people that are listening to this, one, they're obviously interested in that same space. Go check out Scott's show because he's doing an awesome job. And you've
Thank
had such a wide array of guests. And again, I knew nothing about that's like a whole nother life that you've lived.
you.
But within bodybuilding, you've had such a wide array of guests. So I'm curious as a host of the show and having spoken to so many people in a face-to-face setting like this,
Mm.
what are some of the big takeaways or things that maybe changed your mind about something within bodybuilding that you might
Mm.
not have gotten otherwise? Because just recently trying to get myself in front of people that I wouldn't otherwise speak to recently, I am finding that everyone has either a story or some type of insight that you are blown away by. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if they have 400 followers and they've done 2 shows, or they're a big time coach, they're a former pro. It doesn't matter. You could follow this person on Instagram for years and loosely know whatever they want to share. And then you speak to them like this, and it's like, oh my God, like what? Like this guy
Yeah.
tore his quad twice and
Yeah.
then came back and won a pro card or something, crazy stuff. So, what are some examples, like when I say all this, that stick
Yeah.
out to you from all the different guests that you've had?
Yeah, I'll say one thing is I'll set up podcasts with people. And sometimes a lot of times it's people reaching out to me. And I mean I get tons and tons of inquiries from like marketing agencies, and I say
Mm.
no to 99% of those. But people who reach out to me in the bodybuilding community, oftentimes I'll be like reluctant to have them on. I'll look into them a little more. I'm like, okay, I think I can make an episode out of this. And then I'll have them on, and just like you say, like some story or some thread will pick up, and I'll be like, wow, this is like exactly what I'm dealing with right now, or what I dealt with in the past, of this like what I thought was a somewhat unique experience with something. It could be, some part of prep or some health issue or some injury, and like they have a story, and like we share that experience, and it's really interesting. And it's the same when I'm like listening to episodes of, people you have on. Like it's amazing. Some like listening to this is just a story I think anyone will find interesting, but the guy with the double quad tear, and like how he mentally got himself through like rehab and like getting better. He's like, yeah, I read books and that got me through. I was like, holy shit.
Insane,
But
dude.
I,
And
I,
I
I
followed that kid for years. And like,
yeah,
I knew that he went through it. I can
yeah,
remember sending him some messages like, hey, man, you got the goods. Like, just stick with it, stay positive. But
yeah,
it's so disconnected. Like, even following or even sending a
yeah,
personal message to someone, it's so much less personal than it is speaking like this.
yeah, yeah. So I think the bottom line is you surprise yourself with what you would get out of an episode, and the stories you pull out of people. Um, and then the other thing I've learned, it kind of as an interviewer, is it can be really tempting when you're having someone on who you really want to talk to about a lot of different topics, to try to cover a lot. Um, but I think it's better to narrow it down
Mm.
and say, hey, we're gonna deep dive on this. We're gonna keep the focus on this. Like Austin Stout, I was super excited to talk to him, and I could have gone in a million directions with him. He knows a lot about everything, and I was like, let's just try to keep it to contest prep. And even that, I felt like, we were kind of pushing at the edges of the amount of time we had, and didn't get to talk about absolutely everything. So I think just kind of narrowing the focus can be really helpful.
Man, that is such simple but yet incredible insight. And after you said it, or as you were saying it, I realized like, wow, he is like a master at doing this, because I listened to the Austin Stout episode, and Austin is known for so many different things. Yes, he's an awesome prep coach. Yes, he's got tons of people like exceptionally big. He's the gut health guy. He's like the functional health guy. He's someone that knows about all of like the mitochondrial efficiency aspects that have come to light recently. And I listened to that episode, and it's so funny because it was a narrowed talk. You went into it and you were like, hey, we're going to talk about contest prep. And I felt like it was Pandora's box that was just beginning to be opened.
Yeah,
And then I can remember, not to plug the episode, but when you had me on, you were prepared and you were like, hey, you and I could talk bodybuilding for 5 hours with
yeah,
no direction. And a lot of the times that's how the episodes that I host go. It's just,
yeah,
I'm just talking bodybuilding. But you came to me and you were like, hey, we're going to talk about the off season and putting on size and how to be, you know, good at this part of bodybuilding.
hmm,
And it's so simple, but it is so effective. So I appreciate that, because I'm going to try and take that moving forward. Because that's something I've struggled with, where it's like, man, I followed this person, or they're known for X, Y, and Z. how am I going to narrow this down? There's
Yeah.
seven different things I want to talk to them about. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. Is there anything, hmm, there's two questions. One, is there a favorite guest of yours or a guest of yours that maybe surprised you the most and why?
Um, it's an easy one to jump on because he's my coach, but having Dom on and hear him
Mm,
talk about peaking and some of the intricacies of peaking and manipulation and how it can play into making weight and how that affects peaking.
yes.
I was just like, I felt like I was watching a genius. I was like, oh my God, you know so much about this. So that,
That's Dom Kuza for the
yeah,
listeners.
Dom Kuza, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, that's when I was like, I need to, if I am gonna do this again and I'm gonna be close to the weight limit, like I need to feel safe, and Dom's the guy. So um, that was a really eye-opening episode for me.
Had you not hired him prior to that?
No, no,
Oh, wow. So that was your
I
chance to
didn't
interview
hire.
him, literally.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah,
kind of like
cool.
an interview.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to put this on YouTube, but I'm kind of interviewing you for the job right now. I agree. That was like a masterclass. There was
Yeah,
things in terms of diuretics that I admittedly did not know, where
yeah,
he's talking about people that tend to shy away from them because they lack the understanding of how they work
yeah,
and how to troubleshoot them. And I could think of almost every coach that I've ever worked with that immediately came to mind. I'm like, oh my God, that was not to name names, but it's to hear him discuss it. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone discuss diuretics and what they do and how to properly troubleshoot them in a way that he did like that. I mean, even he's talking about, and I've asked this of people before, separate of using diuretics, but for him to understand, like, you need to get feedback from the client in terms of how often they're going to the bathroom, down to what color their urine is at this point, is so, it's so beyond like what the standard of coaching is.
yeah.
So yeah, I can see now why that it makes sense that you had that interview first and then went on to hire him. So um last thing, what is, because you had mentioned earlier, like it's mostly focused on bodybuilding, but what is the criteria or what are you looking for in a guest? Is it simply just people that you're interested in speaking with?
Yeah, it's someone who I think I'm interested in speaking with, and it can be different. Like I'm cognizant of the fact that like, and not to play the diversity card, but like just me talking to another middle-aged white guy about bodybuilding who like it's like, yeah, I I train hard and I eat protein and like
Yes.
I take these drugs. It's like that's not going to be interesting for most people. So like being able to have like Corey on to talk about female PEDs and prep and like just try, and I'm not saying every guest needs to be diverse, just like I need to not feel like I'm going to be bored interviewing someone is basically the criteria.
Right. So it is just it, because you are someone that enjoys podcasts. That was one of the first things you said on the episode is that you were listening to podcasts even before they were really a thing. So
Yeah.
you are like the embodiment of the audience. You want to be entertained and enjoy what the conversation that you're having as
Yeah.
well. Okay. I said last thing, but one more. If you were to give just any random, unsuspecting fellow podcast host some advice, what would it be?
Um, I would say try to bring some flavor to it. Like try to have and I think you do a good job of this. Like try to like with your intro, with your outro, like
Mm,
just try not to make it like, monotone and boring. Like people are listening to this for information, but they're also listening to it for entertainment. And I think
yes.
this is the thing I don't always do well is like
Mm,
I'm just there like getting the information and like try to make it in some way a little bit fun or a little bit quirky or something
Yeah.
To make people be like, yeah, it's another episode of this, and like the familiarity aspect, and like, it's kind of like watching your favorite, I don't know, like Simpsons episode. Like,
Mm.
it's kind of like a routine. You have the song,
Yes.
like, just find some way to like bring some sort of an identity to the podcast, because there's
Mm.
so many podcasts out there. And the world doesn't need another boring podcast.
I was just going to say, I picked up on you having that thought in 2016, and I said to myself, I can't imagine how he must feel about people that do podcasts now. My goodness, everybody's got one.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on, bodybuilding wise, you're with Dom Kuza now. Part of what I wanted to talk to you about, talking about narrowing down, the different topics that we're going to discuss. I want to discuss with you in your bodybuilding experience. You've done an interesting thing where I feel like you very intentionally have, and I'm just going to say this because people will hear this and label it this way,
Call it
but
out.
you've kind of intentionally coach hopped,
Yeah.
which whatever. I mean, it's your
Yeah.
life, it's your
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Um, which knowing you and the way that you think and the way that you execute things, have come to understand this about you, that that is simply because you wanted to learn from these particular people
Yeah.
along the way and pull as much as you can from each name or person that you respected enough to kind of hand the reins over, at least
Yeah.
temporarily.
Yeah.
So talk to me about bodybuilding, the journey for you. I know that you were a rower and a college athlete.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a middle life in there with carnivore. So you come out of that, you get into bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Kind of walk me through it from there, and then in as each individual chapter, let's
Yeah.
talk about it, like who was guiding the ship.
Yeah. So, to keep a long story short, coming out of rowing, so I was a competitive lightweight rower, starting in eighth grade all the way through college. And so that was a lot of cardio and a lot of dieting and a lot of injuries.
Mm.
And I was hypogonadal coming out of that. I was 150 pounds. I'm 5'10". I was 5'10" at the time. I'm now 5'9". And I was 20% body fat on DEXA scan,
Mm.
and three Z scores below the mean in terms of bone mineral density for my age.
Okay.
Uh, so that led me to a whole journey around TRT and finding out I was hypogonadal, doing a lot of research, eventually starting TRT. And so I started that in 2017, mid carnivore. Um, had amazing results in terms of recomping, building back the bone density. And I started getting into lifting around that time. I hadn't really lifted a weight until I was like 27 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't like bench press in high school or in college or anything like
Right.
that. In rowing, actually, weightlifting was considered like a way to get injured, or you're going to put on muscle and it's going to make
You're
you
going to be
slow.
too big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. If I could go back, I would definitely change that. But
Okay.
so around like 2017, 2018, I hired my first coach. I was still trying to make carnivore work, and he was like
Mm.
kind of transitioning me. Um, so I guess this was at the end of carnivore, more like 2019. His name was Jacob Shepis out of JPS, which is a big like natural bodybuilding and powerlifting group in Australia,
Okay.
JPS Nutrition. And he was great. He was very caring. He basically taught me like macros because I had never learned that before.
Sure.
Uh, and like put me on a very basic, like 4 day a week training program. Um, and then he had some life stuff and some family stuff, and basically couldn't continue working with me
Mm.
anymore, which was unfortunate. And then I was kind of doing my own thing for a bit. And then a buddy of mine named Zach Moore, who's an amazing coach, he has worked with some of the best athletes out of Indianapolis. And he was like one of the head coaches for Precision Nutrition, if you've ever heard of that business. And then he was the programming coach for Keto Gains, which was like a big
Mm.
keto plus strong lifts type um, weight loss and body recomp group. So he taught me about like programming exercises and how to think about different lifts. I worked with him for like the start of COVID, basically.
Okay.
And then I wanted like a coach who could help me with the nutrition side as well. So I hired Steve Hall from
Yeah.
Revive Stronger. He's awesome, big podcast guy.
Yeah.
And he was an amazing coach. He was so caring. He taught me how to train. Like he taught me
Yeah.
how to execute lifts. He did a lot of video feedback with me. He taught me how to count macros, how to structure food, how to balance fatigue and pushing hard. And it was mostly like Renaissance periodization style training. Uh,
Yes.
but he was very open-minded. And then along the way, I think I worked with him for over a year. Along the way, I also started working with Alex Kickle at the same time.
Yes.
He's the one
Yeah.
who he was helping with the PED side. So I started
Mhm.
using drugs for the first time around that time. And I'd already been on TRT for a while. So like the first cycles were very mild and very intelligent. It was like I could get DECA from my TRT clinic. So I was doing like 150 tests, 300 DECA or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and then worked with, and then basically for a while I worked with Steve. And then I started getting in my head that like this RP training is stupid. I don't like it. I'm sick of it. And then I had some family stuff happen and I couldn't train for a little bit. And then when I came back, I wanted to like work with some of the big name UK coaches who are into like JP style training. And some of them have very large followings online, but a lot of them didn't work well for me. Some were doing cookie cutter plans, some were very detached, and then one who everyone who's listening to this would know was way overcomplicated. Like each day was literally, I'm not exaggerating, 35 to 50 rows of feedback for each single day in a spreadsheet. Yeah. Um,
I thought my original start in spreadsheets was bad. Looking
yeah.
back, man,
Yeah. I was like, what is the point of this? Like, what are we doing here? Um, And then I worked with, in a similar vein, a US coach who is attached to a very big name. You would know him, Joseph, well. And I worked with him for like a month, and he had copy and paste errors that were clearly from someone else's plan, didn't pertain to me at all. And when I called him out on it, he got very defensive, and then he missed like two or three check-ins in a row. So didn't work out with him.
crazy.
um, I did a month of co-coaching with Menno Henselmans. That was insane. It was like two workouts of full body, one rep max on like 12 different lifts. And then you take those and you take those and he gives you like the weights to use. And then you do like 5 sets to failure of every exercise, full body, 6 days a week. Um,
Oh
it
my
was,
God, dude.
and I was just like,
Does your body break?
I, that's when I stopped. I was like, this is not
Yeah.
going to happen. Like I did it for a week and I was like, I will die.
That's
uh,
wild. Not to cut you off, but it's wild because I was going to give props for all the rhetoric around this almost like feud between the bros and the science guys. I feel like I have to give credit to Steve Hall. He's like perfectly somewhere in the middle.
he's
He's
very open-minded. He's also done it for, he's coached for so long, like you, he's coached for so long. He's like, he can work with a lot of people and get really good results. I
that
think,
I just feel like he has a deep understanding that only comes from real life experience of what is applicable and what makes sense in real life versus what is the studies. And he also, when you hear him speak, he doesn't sound like one of these guys that is trying to sound or imitate an expert. He just is an expert
yep.
from what he's lived through, where he will say things like, if X, Y, and Z, you may like this, not X, Y, and Z is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Like all these other guys that make the 30-second reels. On the flip side of that, hearing the because they're kind of intertwined. They're in a lot of the same spaces, him and Menno.
Yeah.
And so to hear that they're just on opposite ends of the spectrum, coaching wise,
Yeah.
is interesting to me.
Yeah. And it's funny you call Steve an expert because he's the last person in the world who would ever
He
call
would
him.
never say that.
He's the most
Yeah.
modest, like gentle-hearted guy.
No, he has my total respect as someone
Yeah.
that probably is more on the bro side of the fence.
Yeah.
He has my total respect.
Yeah. Um, I worked with Jared Feather for 3 months.
Yeah.
So people talk about him being such an amazing coach. Um, I think he probably is. He taught me how to like push my volume up, but he was way overbooked. And this is not his fault.
Mm,
This is RP's fault. Like there were like fights happening over email between him and like his handler from RP with like
mm,
me in the middle of it. And RP was like pushing him constantly to take on more clients and to raise prices. And he would be like, no, keep Scott at this lower price. And like it was like I feel like he was a victim of the company and he was also going through some family stuff at the time. So I can't say bad things about him because I think he was just a product of the situation he was in.
Not to interject, I've heard great things about him too. I would say that for from the outside viewer, it seems as though he's forever branded with the science side of things.
Yeah,
But I've spoken to him in person a couple times when I lived in Texas. He was friends with a guy that lived out there and would come visit, and I'd see him in the gym and speak to him, and I would come away from it and I would be like, "This guy is the complete opposite of what I would have
yeah.
expected from his online persona."
He's also so nice. Like he really
That's what
wears.
I mean. Just very genuine and nice, like very humble, down to earth. Spoke to you like not like he's some big name, which
Yeah,
is endearing to me when you meet people that have internet presence.
yeah. Then after all of that, I worked with I basically was at a point in my life where I was like, I'm becoming too obsessed with this. I need to make sure I'm balancing like my time with my wife and like being a good husband or fiance at the time, whatever it was. So I worked with someone named Gareth Buchanan, who's one of the Physique Collective coaches under
Okay.
Three.
Yeah.
Uh, Super nice guy, Scottish guy. I worked with him for like 9 to 12 months, and he just gave me more life perspective.
Awesome.
He was a good coach. He cared, very accountable. Everything was on time, and he just really helped me out with like, each week he'd be like, "Tell me two things you did for your wife," or something like that, and
Mm.
he'd be like, recognizing those wins, which was really cool because that's exactly what I needed at that point. Um, and then we kind of parted ways, and then I worked with you actually. And yeah,
Surprise.
I had a great experience. You taught me how to push harder, structure training better, push food up, really just push my limits in terms of a lot of different things. You gave me a lot of confidence. You were very caring, became a close friend. And then you also taught me how to love the process in bodybuilding even
Hmm.
more than I already did. So I really appreciated all
Wow, that's nice. I thought you were going to come on here and tell people I suck, so that's good.
that. Yeah, they already know that. No, I'm just
Yeah,
playing.
no, I
You're
know. You're telling me.
and then I think basically what happened is after like 6 months, you had some change, like you had moved away from the co-coaching thing,
Yep.
and you were basically like, "Hey, do you want to move to month? Like the rate's going to change, blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, I think we're good." Like,
Yeah,
so we parted ways amicably. It wasn't like there wasn't
I would
any
say so.
there wasn't
Yeah.
any coaching reason I left you.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so no hard feelings. And then I worked with Matt Strong, who's another one of the Physique Collective guys from the UK.
Okay.
Um, and he basically taught me how to diet. I hadn't dieted once to this
Yeah.
point.
Well,
Uh,
to you, a 4,500 calorie diet is a diet. That's a deficit to you.
and then he taught me how to diet while also living life And
Mm.
he's kind of like a lifestyle guy for coach. He also like helps a lot of coaches, mentors a lot of coaches in the UK, and
Okay.
he's like trying to build lifestyle for coaches in a way. Um, and he actually coached me to do a photo shoot, which I
Okay.
decided I wanted to do partway into working with him. And he was very caring, and that worked really well. And then
Awesome.
did the photo shoot, and we kind of said goodbye. Um,
Can I
and
cut you off,
then,
Scott? Can I
yeah,
ask, when you say lifestyle, are you saying like he brought you through a deficit and got you to like photo shoot ready, but also was doing so in a way that he along the way he's trying to teach you how to not compromise the rest of your life outside of bodybuilding?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
good way to put
Awesome.
it.
That's a great coach. That's a great
Yeah.
skill.
Yeah. And I think the way he's branded himself, he does coach competitors now, but he's very much along the ways of like, hey, I'm gonna take guys who are like in their early 20s who are starting to become bodybuilding coaches online, mostly in the
Mm,
UK, and
okay.
they want to have they want to accelerate their coaching business, they want to get better at that, and they want to like, walk the walk.
Yep.
And they want to have like a great lifestyle along with it. And that's kind of like the demographic he goes for now.
I
Um,
like that. I'll say one other thing too. I think that makes sense because to me, there's a huge gap. I see and talk to a lot of these young guys that desperately want to be full-time coaches.
yeah,
And then they also turn around and say they don't want to help kids that are 17 to 21.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, in my example, I'm 33 years old and I have the bare minimum in terms of like life responsibilities. I don't have to go to a full time corporate job. I don't have children. I don't have an ex wife. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I still wouldn't hire one of these 21-year-old kids because what life experience do you have? Like,
yeah.
besides what real life bodybuilding experience do you have? What life experience do you have? I'm always shocked when I hear that the 40-year-old soccer dad that's trying to manage bodybuilding on top of two kids and whatever else hired XYZ 22-year-old influencer with 4 million followers. I'm like, what is he going to tell you? How is he going to help you?
Yeah.
So hearing that he is kind of trying to fill that void and prepare these kids to do that
Yeah.
is actually genius as I sit here and think about it.
And he's very like anti douchebag coaching. Like he really tries to
Awesome.
like hammer into these kids' heads, like, don't be the like thumbs up emoji,
Yes.
up the
Yeah.
T3 burger and fries. Like he makes a lot of those jokes. So
I like him.
he's a really good guy. Um, and then I'll say like between some of those shitty coaches earlier who I had like a month with, I had like a 6 month spurt, maybe longer with Nick Kloff, who's one of my close friends now, and he's the coach I have worked with the longest total off and on,
Okay.
probably a total of 2.5 years in some. And he has taught me so much. Nick is one of the most caring and obsessed people with his clients and with all the intricacies of bodybuilding that I've ever met. He's analytical in the best way possible. I would say if there's anything bad about Nick, it's he puts too much of himself into his clients,
Mm,
and he sometimes gets burned for it by
yeah.
bad people. Um, but he's extremely professional. He taught me how to train hard and accurately. He's someone I'd go to battle for. He's an awesome guy and um, really really like him. And yeah, I'd recommend him to anyone. I know people sometimes poo-poo these like coaching teams, but he like my best friend now is who tangentially Vadim.
Yeah.
I met him through Nick's coaching team,
Oh, awesome.
like multiple trips with him and some of the other guys, and there's like a small circle of like 8 like Nick Law fans for life, basically,
Yes.
who were some of his first clients, and yeah, he's really a good guy. And then yeah, I guess the last two. Justin Compton, awesome coach, really smart guy, very caring, old school, but knows everything. Like
Yeah.
he's your coach, so I'm just telling you all things you know. Um,
Yes.
he's walked the walk like anyone, and he's really good at getting guys good results. He's very practical. He's open to changing his mind, open to changing his
Yes.
ways. He's seen it, and he's very smart, and he taught me how to get big. He taught me how to rebound.
He will do it. He will do
Yeah,
it.
like no other, as you've experienced. And now I've been with Dom for uh, 9 months, and gonna be with him for the remainder of prep and beyond, hopefully. And he's, like I talked about earlier, probably the smartest person I've met in the community with
Yes.
results to back it up. He is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to digestion, peaking, supplementation, drugs. He knows more about everything. We haven't really talked about training once ever,
Right.
just because that's like something I usually manage mostly on my own.
Yes.
But I describe him as a sniper. Like he will collect not as much information as like Nick, or not nearly as much as that one coach I talked about, but his check-in will be like, this is the thing we're talking about right now. Like this is the
Mm.
only thing that matters. Um, and he uh, just has solutions to all types of problems. Like, you know,
Man, I'm not sure that I've heard a more thoughtful compliment about a coach than he's a sniper.
yeah,
If that doesn't give you confidence about Dom as a coach, I
yeah,
don't know what would. I was
yeah,
just, man, I think the episode that came out yesterday, which would have been really today, I was giving credit for Dom Kuza about something that he enlightened me on that I had never
yeah,
even thought of or heard of. And I had made a public post about, something I like doing with PEDs. And then he very discreetly, as to not make it look like I didn't know what I was talking about, publicly sent me a message and was like, look into this. And that was all that he said. And then I
yeah,
looked into it and I was like, whoa, okay, that's going to make a hell of a difference. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you, Dom.
yeah. He's really great. So I appreciate him. He's helped me. Like the last 3 months have been a little bit better, but the 6 months before that were some of the hardest times in my life,
Mm,
in terms of injuries and sickness,
mm.
that I've ever experienced. And he helped me through a lot of it. So I'm very grateful for that.
He's a good person. If you were going to go through a period like that, he's a great person to have in your corner for it. I
Yeah.
almost, and I don't know these guys super, super well, but from the outside, and I don't mean this in anything but a positive, but I almost think about Austin Stout and Dom Kuza in a similar fashion,
Yeah.
where they are just so incredibly yet effortlessly knowledgeable about everything that comes up. And there's no ego attached to it, is I
Yeah.
think the thing that I can draw from both of them as well, is
Yeah.
that all of this knowledge and experience is not attached to any type of arrogance or ego. And that's a winning combination. So
Yeah.
shout out to both of those guys.
Yeah. I haven't been coached by Austin, but from the outside in, they appear very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, just from what I hear from other clients that have worked with Austin or people that have mentored with him.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk because you and I competed at the same show last
Yeah.
April. You look spectacular. I did not. So
I don't know.
I would like to talk to you about that experience, even if just briefly.
Yeah.
Part of what I want to talk to you about is your GLP use during that time,
Yep.
what that was like,
Hmm.
and then looking back on it slash looking forward to this upcoming prep that you're doing.
Mm.
How has your thought on that changed or evolved?
So it was awesome. It was very helpful. Um, I like everyone gets hungry I just don't get hungry as early as most people, and I'm very used to dealing with it. Like I was a lightweight rower for 8 years. I can cut weight like anybody. But I the thing that helped me the most about it was, and I was using semaglutide, by the way, so one of the earlier generations of drugs. And the thing that helped me most was the stable blood sugar levels. So
Yes.
I didn't ever get that like I need food right now, like the
Yeah.
urgency. And also I didn't wake up at night. Like a lot of I think
Yes.
people waking up at night in prep and in dieting situations, it's multiple things. It's cortisol, but a lot of it is blood glucose and having stable blood glucose levels. And so that was a huge advantage for me. And then what I would do differently is I was managing it myself, so I just kind of did whatever I wanted, and I got to the point where I was probably using too much. Um,
Okay. What's
and
too much if you want to talk about it?
I can't remember the exact dosing, but I want to say I was doing like zero point 0.5, like 500
Mike's. Yeah.
micrograms a day. Um,
Okay. So like three and a half.
yeah, like 3.5 a week.
Okay.
At one point, I think I
Okay.
got 3.5, maybe more.
And
And
what makes you say that?
so it's a little bit convoluted, but I had 2 weeks of really horrible digestion during it.
Okay.
And it definitely wasn't brought on by the semaglutide, but I don't know if the semaglutide made it worse. Um, I had a really bad reaction to halotestin. So as soon as I started taking halotestin, I got uncontrollable 24/7 hiccups throughout the night, throughout
Oh
the
my God, dude.
like most people get hospitalized after 3 days if they have hiccups that long. I had it for 2 weeks. I was burping constantly in between hiccups and extremely bloated. And I even started regurgitating my food towards the end. Took out Halo 2 days later, it was gone. And I tried everything in between in those 2 weeks. I tried antacids, I tried PPIs, I tried you name it, betaine, I tried it, but yeah, I just needed to not take Halo.
That's incredible, dude. I've had 24 hours straight and I was a maniac
Yeah,
because you can't sleep, you can't rest. It's every seven
yeah,
seconds for
yeah.
24 straight hours. So
It
2 weeks,
was
I would
driving my
be,
wife crazy.
oh my God, and driving you crazy too, though.
Yeah,
You're living with it.
yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It was very
All right. So no Halo then.
yeah. So I don't know if the semaglutide affected that. So the moral of the story is like moderate the dose and like Dom's controlling it. So
Okay.
that's
And
um
then so moving forward, do you guys besides do you one, I would say, do you plan on using a GLP again?
yep.
Follow-up question, would it be semaglutide again? Or are you gonna kind of evolve up?
Yeah, so I asked Dom, I said I want to use sema or tirzepatide because in my mind, tirzepatide is I forget the exact multiple, but I think it's 10 times more expensive if you
Oh,
factor in the fact that
okay.
the dose, like 1 milligram a week of semaglutide is roughly equivalent to 5 milligrams a week of
Yes,
tirzepatide.
yes.
And from my experience in my mind, as long as you're not getting side effects on semaglutide, negative side effects, there's no massive advantage over of tirzepatide over semaglutide. Um, and so I'm like, hey, save your money. Like
Right.
I'm a cheap ass when it comes to drugs,
Yeah.
when I can be. Um, and then retatrutide is just like, let's pay even more. But I started using sema and tirzepatide, and Dom was like, no, we're using retatrutide. So I was like, okay, fine, we're using retatrutide. And I was able to find a pretty cheap source. So we're
Yeah.
just using 2 milligrams a week right now. And I'm
How is it?
it's good. I like it for the dose it is, it's definitely having more of an effect than
Okay.
semaglutide would because 2 mil, like if you look at the starting dose charts in patients, it's roughly 1 milligram for semaglutide and 5 milligrams for retatrutide.
I
And
was going to say these clinical trials are kind of off the charts compared to what
yeah,
you hear bodybuilders using them.
yeah,
And were you going to say that you're doing just a single shot a week?
yeah, I'm doing one shot a
Okay.
week. Because
Okay.
Dom said there's some, I forget the exact mechanism, but there's something to do with there's a reason why it's better to take it once a week
Well,
rather.
that's what it says in the pamphlet. It's created
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
And I
uh,
could see the peak and you getting the full benefits of it being that way.
yeah,
But then it also, I think it just depends on how you respond. Because I know some people, same dose, different administration schedule,
yeah,
can handle daily or every other
yeah,
day. And then that bolus shot will bring on side effects for
yeah,
some people. So
yeah. So I'm happy with it so far.
yeah. What is there anything like in terms of like your mental perspective or anything? Like I know that you had mentioned you're probably not at a place where you're hungry yet. And knowing you and your metabolic demands, you're probably still eating an off season's amount of food for most bodybuilders. With
Yeah,
that said, anything that you noticed that maybe you didn't expect or that's been um, a surprise to you?
there's a lot of variables that are different this prep.
Okay.
So it's
It
it's
is tough to tell.
yeah. Like
So let me ask you then. So besides the GLP,
yeah.
have you spoken to, considered, or are you using any of these other new
Yeah.
exciting compounds or peptides,
Yeah,
in
so
terms of mitochondria or any of these other things?
I was using this was kind of pre-prep. I was using 5 amino 1 MQ and
Okay.
MOTS-C.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I'm using SLU-PP right now.
Yeah.
Um, I ran out of the 5 amino 1 MQ and I was using injectable, which
Yeah.
there isn't like no one's really used it
Yeah.
for human trials. All the human trials are oral. And the pills are just so expensive. Uh,
Yes.
and so I was like, I just like I'd rather spend that money on posing sessions or something. So
That and just knowing what we know in terms of everything else that you
yeah,
could get in either form, it's probably less bioavailable as
yeah,
a
yeah.
capsule.
Yeah. So I was using injectable 5 amino 1 MQ. It stung like hell. It stung like GHK copper if you've ever used that.
Oh,
It was not fun. And then MOTS-C, the way Dom talks about using it is using it like twice a week after your hardest workouts as like a way to replenish mitochondria and basically like
mm,
avoid that like huge slump after a leg day.
yes.
You basically
Yes.
will take it before your leg day and it won't make you feel as awful afterwards. So I was using that, also ran out. And I am using SLU PP. I'm up to 750 micrograms a day.
Okay. And what has been the takeaway from each of those, if any?
Nothing. I can't say.
Nothing.
I mean, I'm not saying it didn't do anything. I'm just saying
Sure, sure.
I can't say for sure what's
Yeah,
doing.
it's
Uh,
tough to tell. I've heard not great things about the 5 amino. Uh, what is it? 1 MQ. I
yeah,
haven't heard great. I've heard people a lot of times are frustrated because of the cost, and then
yeah,
there's no really perceived benefit.
yeah,
I have been using SLU since I was in the like pre-prep cruise.
yeah,
The way that I understood it, it's almost like you're going and getting your car tuned up and the tires rotated and the oil changed before
yeah,
you go on a road trip. So that was why I started it then. People have heard me talk about this, and I'm interested in your experience, but we have had my preps have always been very different compared to yours.
yeah,
Uh, it's very low food, it's insanely high cardio, and many times even the coach has commented that like this just isn't lining up like with the amount of effort and what's going in versus how it looks.
yeah,
And then this time it's the complete opposite. Compton has me going out to eat on a fairly uh consistent schedule, which has been a weird thing to kind of mentally maneuver. I went out, he told me to go out to eat on Saturday and then check in
yeah. I saw
today.
your blog.
I
Yeah,
checked in today and he like added tons of food because I was back to
Wow.
the same weight. And so I've just never had that experience. He's
Yeah.
toggling cardio where he'll bring it down some. It's always just been a straight shoot to try to get as far down
Well,
as you can.
it's the
So
guy who knows how to do that because that's how he lived too. He
yeah,
had that type of
yep.
metabolism.
So
Um,
I don't know. I would like to. That's really the only big thing that's different. I mean, I got bigger and more muscular this year for sure,
yeah,
but also this is a pretty dramatic difference. So I'd like to chalk it up to that.
yeah,
Um, what about the Motsi? Because I literally just did my first shot today. It's supposed
yeah,
to all work synergistically.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I believe these things work. I believe the science. But like I have never taken a drug where I've been like, wow, I noticed like in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah,
bodybuilding drugs where I've been
yeah.
like, yeah, other than maybe Tren, like
Or the Halo because it gave you hiccups.
yeah. I can't name a bodybuilding drug I took and was
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
like
I'm with you.
difference. Or like, maybe with Clen, I've noticed it because it helps me breathe a whole lot better because I have asthma.
Yes,
That's I've
yes.
noticed from it. But yeah, I'm not the type of person who I guess feels drugs.
Sure.
Um,
No, that's fair, especially about these because it's kind of just even if they're working their best and as
yeah.
advertised, it's kind of just improving the software in the background
Yeah, it's
more than
background. Yeah.
anything else.
It's funny
Okay,
you
but
say that about your prep though, because I'm having the opposite experience. Um,
really, I was going to
yeah,
say this
sometimes,
is making me closer to you. It's making
yeah,
me more
yeah.
similar to you.
I mean, prep isn't hard.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. I'm not struggling. But the weight loss has been every week it's slower than we expected.
you're a
Um,
lot more muscular, dude.
yeah.
So
So
in terms of like the scale not coming down quite as much, I'm not
yeah,
surprised.
but every week Dom is like, wow, we need to speed things up a bit.
Oh, no shit.
And I think that's good because I'm doing two shows. Um,
Right. And
and
you want to be ready. You don't want to go up
and
there not ready. Trust me.
and I think last year also part of the reason I lost so fast is because I was using T3. And
Mm,
I also think independent of the T3 thing, I think I lost weight too quickly. And
yeah.
I do think it resulted in some muscle loss. And I think
Yes,
part
it
of that is
will.
also getting show lean for your first time in your life. You're gonna probably lose more mass than
Overdo it.
otherwise.
Yeah.
I was losing 3 pounds a week for most of prep last year. And this year it's been like a pound and a half every
Okay.
week.
All right.
So,
I think
and
that's plenty. Knowing you and knowing your body a little bit, man, I can't think of someone that needs T3 less.
yeah, but I think we're like, it's a little bit scary because we're going to have a real thing with the weight cap this year.
Yeah.
Um,
What is your weight cap?
it's 202 for classic.
Okay. And what are
And
you? 220
we're,
something?
we're now 11 weeks out, right?
Yeah.
11 and some, both
Yeah.
of us.
11 and a half. Yep.
And I'm 219 now.
Okay. All right. It's manageable. It's manageable. It'll happen.
Yeah,
And you have
and
the right guy. You have the right guy for the job.
he can make it work like within shooting
Yes.
distance. But we have to step on the gas a little bit, and so
Yeah.
we are. So that's
Well, it'll
fine.
be
Like,
good. It'll be good. Dom will have you
very-
sliced and you're going to be on weight. So
yeah,
I'm excited
I'm
for you,
very
man. When we last spoke, when I was on your show, you told me that it was, I guess not one and done because you're doing multiple shows this year, but this
yeah
is your last year
yeah
in competitive bodybuilding. Is that still the case?
yeah. I'm not going to compete. I
Okay.
have no plans to compete after this year.
The reason
Um,
I ask is because you had mentioned you said I'm going to be with Dom Kuza for the end of this prep and hopefully thereafter. So you will
yeah,
continue to live the lifestyle, retain a
yeah.
coach, and okay, okay,
And
all right,
regardless, even if I were to say like, which I'm not saying, like I'm gonna move
uh,
away from bodybuilding training.
okay,
Uh,
okay,
if I were to say that, I would still work with Dom because I think he can help me through a lot of other
yeah,
problems.
yeah,
Like he's even helping me now with a lot of like cognitive support. A big thing I'm worried
mm,
about just later in life is like neurodegeneration, and so
yes,
he's helping me learn a lot about that. And so there's still so much more to learn from him, and so much more things he can help me with. But yeah, I am going to continue to act like a bodybuilder.
Okay. Hopefully have to eat a little less food so that you can take your wife
Yes.
dancing. But
Yeah.
Dom's a great guy for that too, because as we've seen, he's successfully transitioned himself away from bodybuilding. So that makes
I
total sense.
believe how much weight he has lost. It is insane.
But he
He's
looks
like
great.
he looks phenomenal, and he must feel so good.
Oh my God.
He's
He must feel so much better, dude. Yeah. All right.
like
It's been a pleasure to have you on. We're right at an hour. I have a couple quick hitters that I want to finish with, and
yeah,
I kind of want
please.
to get in the habit of finishing with some of
Yeah,
these. Generic or form GH?
generic every day.
Thank you.
Don't waste your money. Don't don't believe the lies.
Best piece of advice you've ever been given?
um, ask good questions. Uh,
Worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
uh, YOLO.
Worry about it tomorrow. Last one. You can go back in time and tell your 18-year-old self one thing. What is it?
uh, man. Don't row for more than another year. Like do it
Mm,
freshman year, have your fun. Your life is going to be so much happier if you don't keep like
mm.
I'm literally going to physical therapy every week to work on rowing injuries still.
Wow.
And I spend probably an hour a day doing exercises at home to work through rowing injuries, and I'm in constant pain because of rowing injuries. So
That and you train like an animal, like someone that's trying to break something while they're training.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. All right. Scott Myslinski, thank you so much for having for joining me. Thank you for having me on when you did. It was a pleasure
Of
in
course.
both scenarios. Anything that you want to plug or anything anywhere that we can reach you? You offer coaching, so where can people find you online?
Yeah, yeah, I do coach a few people, so if people are interested in that, reach out to me on Instagram, shoot me a DM, we can talk about it. Um, I just want to say good luck on the rest of your prep, Joseph,
Oh,
and I'm following along and really enjoying the vlogs, and thank you for putting on this podcast and really enjoy it. So keep
awesome.
going.
Yeah, likewise, man. Good luck. Both of us have like the regional show on the same schedule, and then hopefully we end up at the same location somewhere up in the Northeast. And
Yeah,
that's all I'll say about that. All the links for everything that Scott's mentioned will be below. So for Scott, I'm Joseph. This was the One More Rep podcast. And until next time, we are out.